we are kind of addressing a contrast between the two of us, or it's seemingly a contrast, because obviously being a therapist, I'm all about feelings and making space for feelings and talking about feelings and getting it all out on the floor. But Dawn is a minimalist. And so we are talking about how, is it okay to put feelings in boxes? Like, I don't feel okay about that. So she's going to help us understand mental minimalism, emotional minimalism, which actually might create more space.
Well, I'm Dawn from The Minimal Mom. If we haven't met before, I'm married to Tom. We have 4 kids, ages 6 through 11, and we've been homeschooling, and Dawn and I connected a little bit over homeschooling. You actually helped with some Facebook Lives last year to help empower other homeschooling moms, and you were hands down the favorite guest. And I think it's just the practical advice. I think most of us as moms can say, it feels like you get it. It feels like you understand us. And as women, and with feelings are big and scary, and so sometimes it's easier to put them in a box.
Yes. And obviously my work as a therapist is all about unpacking the boxes. And so we have a lot in common that way, I guess. But really the question today that I wanted to pick your brain about was really, is it possible to minimize emotion, and is that even healthy?
Yeah.
You know, what does that look like for you? How do we actually do that while still honoring the feelings and experiences that we have?
Yeah, and I think what we're learning is we can't minimize our feelings and emotions. But what's been fun as we've simplified our lifestyle and decluttered our house, I feel like we have space now to entertain these ideas of dealing with feelings and emotions, and it doesn't feel quite so overwhelming. And probably something I didn't learn growing up was that dealing with feelings and grief and emotions takes a lot of energy, and it actually takes time too, and most of us don't have that space right now.
Exactly. Yeah, we're all really spread pretty thin, aren't we, in today's world? We have a lot of residual things that we need to deal with, even from this past year. So it requires a lot of energy. And so if there's stuff around, whether it's physical or emotional, it's actually detracting from that process.
And I don't know, you might know this. I often wonder, is it chicken or egg? Is our outward habitat a reflection of our inner mind? Or if we're living in a cluttered space, is it making our mind feel a little more frantic and anxious? Do you know which one comes first?
I don't.
Okay.
I feel like the two must complement each other though, right? Because our environment tends to reflect who we are, and our relationships tend to reflect who we are. But I think also sometimes when we have a cluttered environment or home, it kind of paralyzes our process. And so perhaps if that was the first thing, then it just feels impossible to overcome.
Right.
But of course, as a therapist, I do not want you to declutter your feelings. I want you to not pack them in the basement. Don't put them in a tote. No more totes. But what are some practical ways, like on a daily basis? What does it really look like for you to do this with your mental state and also your emotions?
Right. And what I love is that, so even if our house is still cluttered, you haven't quite gotten it all decluttered yet, is we can find a space where it isn't cluttered that we can escape to or take a reprieve to. And for me, it usually involves nature. I mean, we're in Minnesota, so as long as it's not 20 below, I mean, I've toughened up. Even when it's like 8 degrees outside, I will at least try to get outside for 15 minutes now. And for me, there is nothing more refreshing and rejuvenating than getting out in nature. And it didn't always start that way. It's something that I've worked up to, but now I literally crave it every day. In fact, now when I start to feel like a stress response, like I read something or I see something that stresses me out, I'm like, I need to go outside for a few minutes. And sometimes it's a walk up and down my driveway. Sometimes it's watering my trees. But it's cool that in the beginning, I had to intentionally no, don't go to the kitchen and eat something, go outside for a few minutes till the craving passes, and then we can go about our day. And so now as I've done that over time, it's kind of like rewired my brain where it's like, nope, go outside for a few minutes. It'll bring stuff back into perspective, and then we can keep moving forward.
Yes, I love how intentional you are about that. That's like a huge insight. And I feel like the nature piece, to tie that a little bit further, when I go outside, I look up. So I don't know if that speaks to you too, but when I look up suddenly I feel like everything's in perspective.
Yeah.
You know, it connects me to God. It connects me to how small I am, but in a good way.
Yeah.
Of, you know, that He's taking care of me, and that there's this huge universe that He's holding in His hands, and you know, we can release that stress to Him. So looking up, as simple as that sounds.
No, I remember one day, like when I really first got into the habit of walking every day, I remember being on the phone with Diana. So I try not to have inputs when I'm outside, like no phone calls, no podcasts, nothing, like just walk and decompress. But I was talking to Diana, and I remember I was like looking at the clouds, and I'm like, Diana, they're different every single day. Like every single day, it's like this new creation of clouds. And for me, that reminds me, we serve such a creative God, and there are big problems right now, right? There are so many big problems, but He has the solutions. And it's amazing now when I look at the clouds, I'm like, you know, Lord, you know what's coming, you know the solution, and it's just a matter of time before we see the pieces come together.
Absolutely. That is awesome. So Dawn, what I'm hearing you say is that as we kind of decrease the inputs or simplify all that's coming in or all that can come in, we're actually creating space to be present and even to express and deal with emotion. Do I have that right?
I think that's good. Yeah. And so Dawn, I really liked what you were saying though, as we were talking a little bit about anxious thoughts. I mean, so prevalent right now, right? For these anxious thoughts to be creeping in. I like some of the tactics that you use with your clients to deal with those thoughts.
Yeah, I like to think of anxiety and those anxious thoughts that come around as kind of like a bully in the playground. And what helps me with that is to really realize I can be empowered over them. It takes a little practice to have something to say to the bully, but I think some of that presentness and having some of those healthy, grounded techniques of staying grounded in the truth is the first step. And so once I have some of those positive thoughts prepared, if that anxious thought comes around, I can actually say in retort to that, well, no, actually, I'm going to go with this instead. And so instead of the sky is falling, you know, I can go to the hopeful, victorious thought. And that Jesus is there, He's taking care of me, and all is going to be okay. Some of those things can be really helpful, just to have that sense of empowerment that we don't have to partner with those thoughts.
Yeah. And so I love this. I think that's such a practical tactic, but again, it does take energy, right? And it takes a little space, because a lot of times when I feel anxious, I'm just like, let's just go on Facebook. I just need to get away, you know, for a few minutes. I'm just going to take a few minutes. I'm going to go on my phone. And that feels easier a lot of times to be able to stop ourselves and like, no, I'm going to deal with this. I'm going to deal with the bully. I'm not going to go hide, right?
Yes.
It really does take energy.
Yes.
And I would like to encourage you too that I do think as we bring our physical space into order, so as you do make a priority of decluttering and simplifying the space around you, I do feel like it makes some of these things easier. And so again, chicken and egg, which comes first? I think you just have to choose where to start today. Is it with the anxious thoughts, or is it like, well, I'm going to tidy my kitchen counter and that's going to be a win, but it's going to be moving me in that same direction.
Yeah, and even journaling your experience. Don't you think that would be interesting?
Yeah.
Like to really be present with, how did that make me feel
Yeah.
once that kitchen space was decluttered?
Yeah.
How did I feel in it? How did I feel afterwards? And did it create more space or bandwidth for me to be present in my life?
Yeah.
Because that's the whole heart of it,
Right.
of minimalism.
Yeah, that's really good.